He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Are you always late?
Sorry, that's my fault.
Are you always late? It's a genuine question.
No,
Some people are.
No, I
You know, very busy people, often late.
Yes, I'm very sorry. I was at lunch with some brilliant business people.
Oh, well, sorry.
And hospitality.
Oh, no, I expect this is going to be very anticlimactic then. Come this way.
Go on.
Boris Johnson's new book, Unleashed, is described by the publisher as one that shatters the mould of the modern prime ministerial memoir. Which figures, Boris, as people call him, has a somewhat chaotic, dishevelled persona, and that's endeared him to many. Without him, Brexit might never have happened. You have such a lot of faith in your personal charm.
Yes, but it was difficult because we've been in there for so long.
You hadn't. He sits down with me to reflect on where his career went wrong.
I think I definitely got that wrong. Look, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they were relatively unimportant.
But all rolled up.
All rolled up. They didn't add up to a row of beans.
And I suggested that his book, which is nearly 800 pages long, is an attempt to salvage his somewhat battered reputation. All right, huge book.
It's a big book, I know. Now, forgive me, but there was a lot to say. And I kept saying to the publishers, look, you know, I've got an awful lot to explain here. Do you mind if I go over a couple of 100,000 words? They said, no, keep going. Normally I obey the dictum of Callimachus, which is mega biblion, mega kakon, and keep it, you know, big book, big
Around
big
page
book,
600, I wondered if you'd had an editor at all.
Well, as I say, they were very, very happy for me to keep going because there's a lot to cover. And you see, it's a 15-year conspectus of British, European, world history. And there's a lot of stuff in that, you know, the from Afghanistan to the Ukraine, the whole
Was
lot's
it
in
an
there.
attempt to salvage your career?
No, not at all. It was a book that I was asked to write. I mean, they came to me and said, you know, we want you to write something. And I thought, well, look, I don't want to just write a sort of, you know, book about me. I want to write a book about the plans we had and still have for
Well, it is.
the
It's
UK.
basically about you.
But it's about levelling up, and it's about the ambition.
You see,
it's about believing in Britain.
The last most of us heard of you, you were being found guilty by the Commons Privileges Committee of lying and deliberately misleading Parliament.
Well, you know, I think that if you look at what I say in the book Unleashed, I think it's pretty clear what I think about all that. And
In fact, the committee found you misled it during the hearing and acted in contempt of it.
Well,
and the House of Commons accepted the report virtually unanimously.
Well, you know, I think that it's pretty clear.
Partygate, right?
It's pretty clear from. I think that the whole thing was a load of absolute.
I know
hogwash.
you do.
I do, and I'm entitled to that belief, and I think that frankly, what really happened was that there were a lot of people in my party who didn't agree with Brexit and didn't like what we did and were gunning for me from a long time out. And I think what I try to get over in Unleashed is that, you know, I kind of underestimated their animosity. And I think that
Doesn't this go to what you've been accused of, which is
if you look at
refusing to take responsibility for absolutely
I take
everything.
responsibility for
I mean,
everything
we're
we
not
did.
even talking about the fact that you ignored your own COVID rules.
Well,
In
again,
the gatherings, it's that you assured Parliament that the rules were followed at all times.
Yes, but you know perfectly.
At
well.
all times.
If you read the book,
I've read the book.
You will see that.
Look, I've turned down. Look at the pages I've turned down.
Thank you, Kim.
Look at it.
I think that as it happens, we were working very hard, and I genuinely don't think that officials in Number 10 in Whitehall set out to disobey the rules. I think that it was very peculiar that the person who did the inquiry, Sue Gray, it turned out had already been approached to be the chief of staff of Ed Miliband. And I didn't realise quite how politically partisan she was.
We're not talking about Sue Gray, though. We're talking about the Commons Privileges Committee, which was quite separate from the Sue Gray investigation.
Well, I mean, it was all the same.
They didn't refer to Sue Gray at all. They made up their own minds and they decided you'd lied and misled.
Yeah, well, I think it was a load.
And that was a majority Tory.
It was a load of hogwash, and I think that by that stage, they relied on all sorts of nonsensical propositions, and the simple reality was that we were working and we were doing our best to get the country through COVID. And seriously, if you think
everybody was working and trying to get the country through COVID, it was a bad look.
It was,
and you were the boss.
Yes,
and
but
you told Parliament
I know
everything was fine.
And I genuinely think so. As I say in the book, I think that the biggest mistake that we made was in the handling of the whole thing. And
you apologised.
And I think that it was a mistake because
it was a mistake to apologise.
Because I went out and I gave this general, blanket apology for everything that had happened. And of course, what then happened was that everybody started making, further allegations about partying. I mean, people genuinely think that there were knees-ups in Number 10, in which, and I saw a thing.
It's not necessary to have knees-ups.
But we didn't.
Not necessary to have drunken knees-ups, snogs, nothing. It was a gathering in breach of COVID rules, which you had asked the rest of the country to subscribe to.
Well, and as I say, I think that it was. I think the one event that I was found to look. I mean, I said on the book. I think it was very, very peculiar, and we at the time actually briefed out that we'd had the event in the cabinet room on the day of my birthday because we thought it was so within the rules and so unexceptional that it could be briefed to the media. In fact, a slightly exaggerated account of that event was briefed out. Look, what I can tell you, Kim, what happened was in my view, a complete stitch-up. And
Why? Why would they stitch you up?
Because they want.
Or more to the point, let me put this another way.
Let me tell you why.
How was it that you squandered
load of bollocks.
your majority of 80 in less than 3 years?
Because people were. You've got to understand that the British establishment and most Tory MPs were opposed to Brexit, and they knew that I'd delivered it, and they knew I'd defeated Corbyn very handsomely, but they thought that, and they resented me. I mean, a lot of them did. And
resented you because you forced
for
Brexit.
All sorts of reasons. Yeah, because that's right.
But surely most of them would have said, look, it's obviously, working. We've got an 80-seat majority.
That's right. And I thought that's what they would conclude. And I thought that they would see that it was a mistake to have a change and a rupture at that stage. But, they didn't. And as I say in Unleashed, I think that it would have been better to continue with the team that we had, because as things turned out, we went on to the 2.5 years after they thought they could dispense with me. They went down to the biggest defeat since the 19th century.
Do you really think that it was Brexit that set them against you?
I think there were a number. I think it was a number of things.
Many other things.
There was. I think there was. Look,
name them.
I think there were various things, and you've got to understand at the end of
Chris Pincher was one of them. Chris Pincher, whom you endorsed. And said, I know nothing about his history of sexual harassment. Turns out you did. You did know.
Yeah, so we certainly mishandled the briefing around that. And it was, but, that wasn't the reason why they
Well, it could have been your support
they
of
turned around.
MP
I think
Owen Patterson's breach of the lobbying rules.
yes, I think that was as I say in Unleashed, I think I definitely got that wrong. But
Here's another one.
I think these things you've got to look. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they were relatively unimportant.
But all rolled up.
And
rolled up.
All rolled up. They didn't add up to a row of beans. But what you really had was a situation in which, towards the end of a long period of Conservative government, after more than 10 years of Tory-led rule.
But only 3 of you.
What you had was a position in which too many of my beloved colleagues on the backbenches didn't think they were going to get promoted under me, didn't think they had a future in the Johnson regime, and they were long-standing opponents of mine, and they thought, look, he's got this huge majority. We're going to be safe. We're going to have the boundary changes. We can afford to roll the dice and get rid of him and see what happens. And I said to them, I thought it was a mistake, so it proved. It was a very big error.
They'd be furious.
I think if we'd stuck with the programme, and if Rishi and I had kept going, we would have been able to deliver some fantastic things. And I have no doubt at all that we would have beaten Keir Starmer in 2024, because whatever you say about my premiership, when I stood down, we were hardly behind the Labour Party at all in the polls.
But you were behind.
And we were
behind.
Between 2 and 5 points behind.
You had 80-seat majority 3 years before.
Yes, yeah, I know. But
what had gone wrong?
But to be behind in the Cameron government was never fewer than 10 points behind between 2010 and 2015, and they went on to win an absolute majority. And above all, they went on to win an absolute majority. So the gap was nothing. And the most important point is that the Reform Party, the more right-wing party, the anti-immigration party, was on zero. And when I was Prime Minister. And what happened...
Was that because you sucked their support?
Basically, because I didn't allow the centre-right to be split.
No, surely you encouraged the right to go with you because you were pro-Brexit, and they were the Brexit party.
Yes, but that's right.
And you gave them what they wanted, so of course you deflated them.
Yes, and
you appealed
to
the racists and the xenophobes of the Reform Party.
So are you saying that 17.4 million people are racist and xenophobe?
No.
That's what you just said.
No, I didn't say that, and I didn't say that.
Are you saying that they were racist and xenophobe?
But a proportion of them, indeed, were, as you know.
What proportion of the 17.4 million people would you say were racist?
How would you characterise Nigel Farage?
What would you... No, I want to ask you. What proportion of the 17.4 million people who voted for Brexit would you say were racist?
It doesn't matter.
No, I'm interested in your view.
How many would you need?
I'm just interested in your view. I don't think that was why they voted for Brexit.
There was a whole range of reasons, but that would be why they voted for Nigel Farage.
So you think that it was about racism and xenophobia? Is that right?
A large part, yeah.
Okay, so what? So how many of them were racist and xenophobic?
I don't know. Count them. You're there.
Well, I don't agree with you, okay? But if you're going to call them racist and xenophobes, I think that's unfair.
So you don't think that the Brexit Party, now the Reform Party...
Are you saying that Gisela Stewart was a racist and a xenophobe? Are you saying that David Owen was a racist? Why not? She supported Brexit.
I didn't say they were all racist and xenophobes. I said they appealed to the racist...
Are you saying they were racist and xenophobe? What about the Liberal Democrats who supported Brexit?
I'm not talking about the Liberal Democrats. I'm talking about Nigel Farage.
You just said that it was racist and xenophobe to support Brexit.
You are misquoting me.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not. You said
that
the reason I was able to...
Let me be clear with you, Mr. Johnson. If you are a racist and a xenophobe, then you are inclined to go with the Reform Party, then the Brexit Party, and for Brexit.
Let's be clear what you're saying here, Kim.
That's what I just said.
You're saying that racists and xenophobes support Brexit, and
Yes.
and that, but you won't say you're.
I'm sure there are many more people.
You're a bit coy about what proportion of the Brexit supporters you think are racist.
Well, you're
and xenophobes.
more of a position to do the polls than I am.
I don't think that that's correct.
All right.
And I think that that's a calumny on people who support Brexit. And I think that you should take that back, because there are 17.4...
I'll take nothing back, and I'm sure people listening to this understand me absolutely clearly.
I think that
you're pretending not to.
No,
and
I'm
telling you something
understanding
else.
you very clearly. I think it's not right to say that people voted for Brexit because they're racist and xenophobic.
No, and that's not what I said.
And you should take that back. And
According
they didn't.
to the then chair.
They should. People voted for Brexit because they wanted a certain vision of Britain, and that's what I tried to explain in Unleashed. And I think it's a very attractive and interesting vision.
And a lot of them
vision
wanted
for this country.
a white vision of Britain.
So you keep returning to this.
Some of them were racists and xenophobes. And you were able to appeal to them.
Are you saying that it was impossible to vote for Remain and to be a racist and xenophobe?
No.
So you're saying there were racist and xenophobes
I'm saying
on both
that
sides?
Nigel Farage attracted the worst elements of your country.
Look, I think that Brexit was about freedom and independence.
Freedom from what?
And being able to do things different. And so one of the points that
Freedom from what?
Freedom from regulation that may not be in your national interests. So one of the things that I try to explain in Unleashed, and I'm delighted you've read it, but look, is the freedom we had when it came to a very difficult moment during the COVID pandemic to regulate and to legislate for our own national interests, and in particular to authorize the COVID vaccinations far faster than any other European country.
That's not true. I know that you credit Brexit with enabling fast vaccination, but is it not?
And I accurately
is it
Brexit.
Not the fact that Pfizer and AstraZeneca would never have required EU approval, regulations for them to be distributed?
No, they did.
Had been in place since 2012.
No, I don't know what you're saying, but the EU process involved a system by which vaccinations had to be approved by something called the European Medicines Agency. And so 27 EU countries waited for the European Medicines Agency to approve those vaccinations, not just Pfizer and AstraZeneca, but Moderna and others as well. We, because we had our own medical health regulations agency, were able to go ahead several weeks in advance. I mean, I think a month at least, 6 weeks in some cases. And at that particular time, that was of huge importance to the people of Britain.
No, I understand.
No, well, because our listeners.
No, I understand. Fast vaccinations, very creditable. However,
can I please?
There is considerable dispute about whether it was the EU that would have held them up, because they could have come in regardless.
No, there's no question that if we'd remained in the EU, and Kim, I think in all intellectual honesty, I think everybody accepts this, if we'd remained in the EU, we would have remained in the European Medicines Agency and part of the EU vaccines procurement programme. And there is not a snowball's chance in hell that we would have come out and done the vaccinations. We would have broken with the pack and done the vaccinations at the pace that we did. And I know that this sort of fries the brains of the Remainers, and they think, because it is a very difficult fact to
what the Remainers say is that you're wrong. So I don't think their brains are fried. I think they just disagree with you.
Yes, but they have to. You have to believe that the UK would have done something totally different from the rest of the EU had we remained in the EU and remained part of the EMA and remained part of the EU vaccine procurement program. It's completely implausible, and they know it.
Indeed, you deserve credit.
So I think rather than fighting on this ground, which I don't think is strong for you, you should concede it. And the fact is that because of Brexit, we were able to get on and vaccinate faster. And just give you the figure that drove everybody potty. If you look at what we'd done by March 2021, we'd vaccinated 45% of the adult population of the country. We'd vaccinated almost 100% of those over 80, the vulnerable people. And it was a fantastic thing. I mean,
Yes.
you can remember how frightening this was.
No.
You had people.
Very,
dying,
I've said, well done.
You had people dying.
However,
it wasn't me. It was
beginning of
thousands.
the
It was thousands and
pandemic-
thousands of people who
the beginning of the
who
pandemic-
did an amazing job. And the point is that it was partly thanks to the regulatory freedom that we had because of Brexit.
Jolly good.
Now, that is just the beginning, I believe, of ways in which the UK can do things differently, can diverge from patterns of European regulation which are not conducive to growth. And if you look at the performance of the UK, European economies,
Since you insist,
with the
there is
American
a headline
economy, it is
just
very different.
today that British food exports to the EU have fallen by £3 billion a year since Brexit.
Well, look, I haven't seen that statistic. Actually,
Well, does that surprise you?
Britain remains, I think, the fourth biggest exporter in the world, in spite of
£3 billion a year.
Exports go up and exports go down. Let's see, we export we
Down
export a lot of stuff.
£3 billion a year since Brexit.
Britain remains, and I think it's actually gone up as one of the biggest exporting powers in the world. And by the way, since we're in New Zealand, I would remind you that our trade with New Zealand has increased by, I think, something like 25%. And we are now, thanks to the free trade agreement, which is perhaps of more direct interest to our remaining listeners,
I've heard that line before.
our free trade agreement means that thirsty, hungry, discerning British consumers are getting through, I think, a quarter or 24% more New Zealand meat and beverages than they were last year.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic thing. And that's important for the people of New Zealand. It's a good thing for the world. And, I'll look at the figures that you mentioned. Overall, Britain's exporting performance has been very good. And actually, the truth is that, in spite of everything that's thrown at the Brexiteers, the UK economy has grown faster since Brexit than Germany, France, Italy, lots of countries that, as far as I can see,
I think that's accurate.
are still members of the European Union.
Look at Ireland for a moment. Ireland's still in the EU, of course, and it's thriving.
Well, I think that Ireland, and by the way, I think one of the reasons for that is because the Irish have done some sensible things on corporation tax, which I think that we should have done. And instead, we're going in the opposite direction. And you will look at what Labour's doing now. They're putting taxes up on business in a way that I think is absolutely crazy. And that we've got a problem now, Kim, where first time since the 1970s, you're seeing talented people actually fleeing the UK because of Starmer's taxes. And it's unbelievable. I haven't.
Not fleeing the UK because of Brexit.
No, of course not.
How would you know?
Because it's happened since the Labour tax regimes came in, and the numbers of people going to places like Dubai, and in Milan and places like that are quite amazing, and that's because Labour has they're putting massive increases in business taxes. They've done a ludicrous thing with the.
Why did people vote for Labour then?
Look, I think that they were sold a false prospectus.
Well, they knew what Labour was going to do.
No, they
Labour
didn't.
raises
Wrong.
taxes.
No, Kim, wrong. Kim is wrong. Look at what Labour said during the general election campaign. They said no taxes on working people. Remember that?
Well, they've been talking about corporations, though, haven't they?
No. Sorry, if you put taxes up on national insurance contributions, you are clobbering working people. And that's what they did, clobbering them. And everybody knows it. And they're now attacking the farmers as well in a very kind of Stalin-esque way, which is exactly what Stalin did, going for the landowners, the kulaks, as they were called, and people feel, you look at even the liberal media in Britain now acknowledges that
when you say liberal, do you mean left wing?
I mean left wing. Sorry, yeah. I mean the left liberal media, and who I love, by the way. But they're like they take the perspective that you just outlined, that Starmer was. They thought Starmer was going to be a kind of Blairite, right? They thought he was going to be a centrist and pro-business, pro-investment. It doesn't feel like that at all to people now.
No.
And so when you say, oh, everybody knew what Labour was going to do, which is, I think, what you just said.
I mean, the general gist.
No, they didn't. I promise you, they thought it was going to be
well, they'll be out of the next election.
They thought it was going to be like that. And I think they will.
And
I think that's absolutely right. I think that this is going to be a one-term
And
Labour
do you
government.
think you'd come back?
And I think that.
Do you think you'd come back?
Oh, look, I don't. I want to try to be helpful, and Unleashed is an attempt to set out ways in which I think that any government should operate in the UK.
See, the weird...
And so the vision I set out in Unleashed is the right way forward for Britain. Britain is an amazing
So it's
country.
like a manifesto.
No, it's a template. It's literally, I'm trying to offer some thoughts for anybody who does the job I did about what needs to happen. I genuinely think that the UK's potential has been partly unleashed because of Brexit, and I've tried to describe some of the regulatory freedoms that we now have. But also, I think that we need to do things with devolution, with regional powers, with infrastructure, with skills that will unleash the potential of the whole country. London and the South East, for too long, have been dominating the economy of the country. And that's a great thing. They're the most productive parts of the whole of Europe. I love them. I was the mayor of London. I championed London.
You loved that. Why did you
it.
stop?
I couldn't, because I did 8 years. 8 years is a long innings.
And can't you do any more? You loved it.
I love being mayor of London, but
You were the king of all you surveyed.
I know, it was wonderful. But it went to my head. So to go back to your opening sort of salvo, Kim, about what
It
went
went
wrong.
to your head?
No, well, it didn't go to my head. It kind of
Gave you an overweening hubris.
So it gave me a false sense of security. I think that would be the best way of describing it. Because when I was mayor of London, I had a kind of basically monarchical structure, and there was no mechanism by which, no matter how choppy things became, there was no mechanism by which I could be removed from office. So, I had great fun. I did some fantastic things. And yeah, look, I mean, I won't hide it from you. Even during the 8 years in London, as you will find in Unleashed, there were some pretty bumpy times. But because overall it was going well, and because I had no backbenchers to worry about, it was in the end a pretty big success.
This was a very telling comment from the chair of the then chair of the 1922 committee when you hit the rocks. He said, you lost support among your colleagues because of your favourite tactic, which was talking rapidly whilst not leaving space for anyone to interrupt. And that worked for you in London as the mayor, but obviously didn't work for you when you were at national politic level.
Well, I think as I've tried to explain what I think went wrong at national policy level. I think that it was a mistake.
In the book, you say that your colleagues had an attack of the vapours.
Well,
I've laid out to you a small fraction of the things that they say you deceived them on, and you're still insisting that they just lost their nerve.
I think that, honestly, I think that's correct for a lot of them. I think that they... one of the biggest problems I had was COVID. It was a nightmare to deal with.
Well, to begin with, it was a shambles, right? You did not want to lock down.
One of the biggest problems was that because of the lockdowns that we implemented
hated those
in
lockdowns.
a timely and effective way, by the way. Because of the lockdowns, I couldn't see my colleagues, and I couldn't, feel their pulse. I couldn't interact with them physically, which you need to do. That's why it's different from being mayor of London. You needed to
Press the
You needed
flesh.
to press the flesh. I needed to be there. You need to put your arm around people. And COVID, you couldn't do that. I mean, you literally couldn't do that. And that was for 18 months at a pretty difficult time. And so, when I say they had a fit of I mean, they're great people, but they were getting sledged by social media.
For the lockdowns.
Over everything. And I think that, I think a lot of them, probably would agree now that if we'd all held our nerve and stuck together, we would have beaten Starmer
They
in 2020.
didn't want to stick with you.
No,
they
I think that's
thought
right.
you were duplicitous.
Well, I don't think that's true. I think that they found a pretext, and I think that was a mistake. And I think there were a lot of them.
That is a complete abdication of responsibility.
I think there were a lot of them who now think it was a mistake to get rid of me.
They should have put up with you not telling the truth to them.
I did tell the truth to them.
Not according to the parliamentary committee.
Yeah, well, I disagree with them. And, there's nothing I can do about that. I think some of the assertions they make are very, very peculiar indeed. And look, there was a move. I don't, for a minute, deny there was a big move to get me out. I think I was to blame for that in the sense that I failed to pay enough attention to a lot of my backbenchers, but it was very difficult, largely because of COVID. And I think if you asked a lot of them now, Kim, I promise you, if you asked a lot of them now, they would agree.
You promised me.
That they goofed.
How many?
Well, I don't know, but I think a lot of them, because
not after they've listened to you calling them, nervy Nellies who have an attack of the vapors.
Well, most of them sadly aren't.
That's not going to encourage them to.
Most of them sadly aren't MPs anymore, and that's very regrettable. I think frankly that we should have stuck together, and it was a big mistake. And I think if you look at it, we would have gone on to do some great things, but we'd already done a huge amount. And we had a record to be very proud of, and I think that by 2024 we'd have done an awful lot more.
You are so insistently optimistic. Are you by nature optimistic, or are you pretending to be optimistic?
I am, but I genuinely think. Well,
because you think people's spirits need to be pumped up.
No, I think that on the whole that some of the gloom about the world is overdone, and I think that I think that the world is not such a bad place. I don't share the general hysteria about the decline of the West and the advent of Donald Trump and so on. I think that
you think Trump's quite a good chap, don't you?
Well, I won't hide it from you. I think he's always been very kind to me, and I think that he was much less bad on a lot of foreign policy issues than people now make out. In fact, I think you could make a very strong case that he was tougher.
January the 6th?
He was tougher than...
January the 6th?
I never liked that, and I told him that.
Never liked it.
But...
You said Trump had a peaceful transfer of power. January the 6th surely puts the lie to that.
I think it was a terrible thing. I've said that to him. But on the other hand...
you can't have both things at the same time.
Hang on a minute. What's happened since then is a man in his late 70s has continued to campaign for every vote that he possibly can and has gone on to succeed fair and square in a democratic process. And I think fair play to him. And just to complete my point about, and I don't for a minute take back what I said about January 6th. I think it was terrible. But there was nonetheless an orderly transition of power from one administration to the next once that appalling event had happened.
But you're talking about it like it was an accident. It was orchestrated by Trump.
Well, but, he hasn't been convicted of any offense for that. And honestly, I think that his record on some of these key foreign policy issues, and not to say nothing of his domestic economic policies, are highly creditable, certainly by comparison with his Democrat predecessors. And
how do you feel about his attitude towards climate change?
So look at Ukraine, about which I care a great
Do you
deal.
think that Ukraine would never have been invaded if Trump had been president?
Well,
why not?
Because I think he would have been tougher. It was he, after all.
How? Do what tough?
Who gave the Ukrainians the shoulder-launched Javelin missiles? Was it Biden? Was it Obama? Or was it Trump?
That's after the invasion.
No, it
How would
wasn't.
he have
It wasn't.
stopped-
It wasn't. It was before the invasion.
When?
It was before the 2022 invasion.
Yeah, but already the Donbass was.
Yeah, but sorry, but who was in charge then? Who was in charge when they invaded the Donbass? Can you remember?
Probably Obama.
It was Obama. And what did he do? Zero.
And
Okay.
what could Trump have done to deter Putin from the
I
invasion?
think, so genuinely, I mean, the answer is I don't know what he would have done, but that in itself is an important thing, because I think that he's tougher, and I think that Putin would have really hesitated before doing something that would have damaged badly the prestige of the West and engaged Trump in that way. And
But
I
if
think
you were right-
and I think that the sheer, and then this is a sort of paradoxical point, but I think the sheer unpredictability of Trump would have been a
This is the
deterrent.
madman theory of.
Well, I don't think he's
Foreign
mad.
affairs.
I don't think he's mad. Look at what he actually does.
No, I'm not
It was
saying he's
very-
mad.
It was actually
It's
very
like,
effective.
wasn't it Nixon?
Look, I mean, just
Who
look at the
said
fact.
if we make them think we're mad, they're going to hesitate to do anything
There's a bit of
to
that.
enrage us.
That's right. That's exactly right. And
All right.
there's a bit of that. And you look at the 4 years he was there, for whatever reason, and I don't think it's a coincidence, they were a period of relative stability. Iran was back in its box. He was tough on the Syria file. He bombed Assad for using chemical weapons when Obama didn't do a thing, and Assad never used chemical weapons again. So, look,
But
all I'm
when
saying,
you're up against- let me ask you this, so based on
all
your
I'm saying,
description-
Kim, is don't ever think everybody freaks out about Trump. Everybody's very depressed about the state of the world today. You asked me why am I optimistic? I am basically very optimistic, and I think that, broadly speaking, we're continuing to lift billions of people out of poverty. Life expectancy for many people, many countries is continuing to increase. We continue to develop astonishing new cures for
I know, it's really good.
drugs.
I just want to get back to
But-
Putin for a moment, if you don't
Yes,
mind.
come on.
If your analysis of him in the book is correct, and he's doing the invasion of Ukraine for the support from the Russian public, they want to be distracted. He wants to distract them from the powerless state that the country is in, so you wage a war. It's a winner, right?
Yeah, you've got it.
He's not going to say, oh, sorry, if Donald Trump or anybody else persuades him.
So you disagree with what I've said about...
I don't. I'm asking you why you think Putin would be deterred if the motivation for him...
Okay, I understand. No, just for the reasons I already gave. And look, I can't be certain of this, okay? I can't be certain. But that's my feeling. It didn't happen in the period 2016 to 2020, even though he didn't, as you said, he invaded the Donbass in 2014. It did happen on Biden's watch. Why? You've got to ask yourself. And I think that, for all the criticism that he attracts, for all the political incorrectness and everything else, some of the things that Trump did on the foreign policy stage were good. Now, on climate change, which you rightly challenge me there. You say, what about climate change?
And you're a new convert.
And I think it's very important. I do think we need to tackle it, but I think that in some of the things he says I don't agree with. On the other hand, he's now got advising him very closely one of the greatest champions of decarbonizing the motor vehicle that there's ever been. In other words, Elon Musk. Now, whatever you say about
comes from other baggage, of course.
Well, sure, but who's
His boot is full of other baggage.
who does more who has done more to, to have
Have you met
get
Elon
rid of
Musk?
internal combustion engines?
Have you met Elon Musk?
I've talked to him. I've talked to him quite a bit. But
Is he nice?
is he what? Is he what?
Nice.
Look, I think the guy's absolutely brilliant.
I thought you were going to say barking.
No, I think he's brilliant. I think, look, come on,
You can be barking and brilliant at the same time.
No, I think that I don't know what you mean by barking, but I think that this is a guy who has built, who manages.
Have you seen what he's done to Twitter, now known as X?
I don't.
It's fairly barking.
Is it? I don't. Look, I'm not a great
let me tell
reader. Do you use Twitter much?
I observe.
I use Twitter. I put stuff out on Twitter, but I don't scroll through Twitter the whole time. I don't use it as my news source. I think that. Look, what he's done with SpaceX and with Starlink. It's astonishing, the creativity. And can I tell you something? Somebody told me something the other day that he's going to come up with, and if this is true, it's going to absolutely eat Apple's lunch. He's coming up with a mobile phone that you're going to be able to recharge with solar power, and so that you won't need to keep plugging it in and charging it up. Now, whatever I bet.
Fantastic.
Now, Tim,
I want one.
Listen to you. There you go. You may think that Elon, whatever you think about Elon, but as soon as he produces a solar-powered mobile phone,
I'll throw money at him.
You will.
Let me ask you this: as a liberal,
yes,
libertarian.
I'm a classic. I'm a libertarian.
Libertarian.
Who's been? Yeah,
Does it worry you? Do you find
libertarian
it
mugged by COVID?
Yeah, lockdown.
What did you think about all that?
I'm not talking about that now. I'm asking you whether, as a libertarian,
yes,
it worries you that multi-mega trillionaires wield so much power.
It does, and I think that. Genuinely, I do worry. Look, I'm also a conservative, right? So I believe in the market. I believe in wealth creation and all the rest of it. But I got to tell you that my biggest anxiety now one of my anxieties about the way the world is going, is that we're allowing a huge gap to open up between the very rich and everybody else.
You mean Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos?
But everybody. There's what I mean. There's the
Russian oligarchs.
The kind of boardroom class is now
sure.
far, and that's tolerable, if and only if people on middle incomes or lower middle incomes actually have access to capital in the form of their own homes. And one of the things, the biggest problem that I think we have in the UK, in most mature Western democracies now, and Canada, they've got it. I think New Zealand has got it. We're not helping our kids get homes in the way that we could.
Well,
and
you need an awful lot of homes for
the
your kids, to be fair.
The cost is huge.
I understand.
And New Zealand is enormous.
What the question was, does it worry you that very, very rich people are wielding political power, particularly if you look at the Trump proto?
Okay, no, let's see what they do with it. I think that
what they do with it is to get richer.
Well, I don't know. That's not the case. There's plenty of precedent for business people to advise government about waste. And if you think it, so Elon is doing something that's very similar to what Derek Rayner did, who was the chief executive officer of Marks and Spencer, when Margaret Thatcher came in. And he actually set up a committee which was to cut the cost of government. And, he continued to hold a post in Marks and Spencer throughout. And,
where are we going with this?
Well, I'm just saying there's nothing wrong with having business people trying to help government, help taxpayers reduce waste.
Is that what you think Elon Musk is doing?
Well, as far as I know, that's what he's trying to do, yes. Well, I do think, actually,
no, that's fine.
I do think that's what he's doing, yes. And by the way, I think some of the things he said sound, I think the points he makes about defense procurement, they ring true to me so far. And some of the things he said, yeah.
It was a low blow, I'll admit, when I suggested that you need a lot of houses for your children, but you do have 8 children.
Yes.
And one of the other things that people know about you is that you have had a lot of partners. You were married to Marina for 25 years. How did she put up with you?
Well, listen, that's a
It goes to character.
A wonderful question, but that's a question really that, you need to put to her.
No, why do you think?
And I've always followed a rule, which is no matter how, charming and brilliant my interrogator, I never answer questions about my, personal life because I wouldn't know where to end.
Well, that was why.
Where do you end?
That was why you got
say
axed from Michael Howard's shadow cabinet.
Well,
because you lied about an affair you were having
Well,
then.
so you say. I mean,
I just did say.
Yeah, I know, but I don't want to. Honestly, I find the best thing about this type of subject is not to talk about it because it's not fair on other people. And the minute you say one thing, of course it invites another question, and it gets us off the main subject, which is Unleashed, and
which is about your character. That's what we're talking about, really.
Well, I mean, I
who are you really? Who is the real Boris Johnson?
I think you will find all that amply explained in the pages of Unleashed. And what you will find...
It doesn't go... I mean, you don't talk about your relationships at all in there. I mean, presumably, you've got these 8 children and you've had impassioned relationships with people and a wife for 25 years and I don't want to go there. Your personal business.
Yeah.
But you do not mention it. And what I want to do is
I do mention... Hang on.
How?
That's not fair.
What?
I do mention Marina. I do mention my marriages. Of course I do.
Barely.
Well, but
I was on holiday in Corsica with my family is about as much as we get. What I want to know is how you
I don't think it was Corsica. Was it Corsica? Anyway, never mind.
How did you find time?
To write Unleashed. It was very easy. I sat down. I just cracked it out.
To have relationships with so many people and so many children goes to character, and at the same time, carve out this extraordinary political career.
Well, I think that, I don't want to talk about my family because
I'm talking about you.
I don't want to drag them into things. And nor do I want to, I work very hard, I suppose would be one answer to your question. I love work, but also I'm committed to what I do. And so the purpose of writing Unleashed was to get off my chest. I mean, look, one thing you're right in that you're so right about one thing, which is that, I think you said right at the beginning something like, you blew it, or why did you throw away an 80-seat majority? And you'd be completely correct in saying that I'm frustrated about what happened. And that sort of, I feel...
Frustrated
with myself, with... I genuinely, because, I didn't think that was what was going to happen. I thought we had a great project and it was obvious we should just keep going. And yeah, so I'm frustrated. And so one of the reasons for writing Unleashed was to explain what I was trying to do and what really gets me going. And so there's a lot of stuff at the beginning of the book about the mayoralty and about my education, where I became a believer in the idea of leveling up. And I had a very happy, lucky childhood, but I went to a school where it was obvious to me that, there was a talent and genius everywhere, but that it reverts to the mean. And I'm certain that in the UK, we are letting too many kids, betraying them, because we're not giving them the opportunities that they need. And the point of being conservative is that you believe in opportunity, and you believe in the state has a job to give people opportunity by doing certain things. And infrastructure skills, technology, as I said earlier, some regional devolution. And which is what we did in London. These are the ways to do it. So it was a big, brilliant, beautiful project, which was frustrated largely by COVID and then by this political disaster.
Well, that's effectively got us off your private life.
Well, no, but I mean, well,
Yeah, no, good.
No, but you know,
No, that's
I
fine.
don't know what else I can say.
So why is it? And if I read that book, I think, oh
I gave
my
you an
God.
answer. You said, "How did I do it?" I did it through hard work.
Hard work.
Hard work.
Yes. Well done.
Isn't that good?
It's nothing like compartmentalization.
Well, it is hard work, isn't it? It's all hard work.
Compartmentalization, very, very hard, I've always thought.
Yeah.
Reading this book, I'm thinking, this guy's Churchill, which is not a thing that's far from your mind because you wrote a book about Churchill in 2014. Some say a hagiography. The one strong man view of history, how one man can make a difference.
Yeah.
How is it then
I would.
that according to several commentators, your legacy is the hollowing out of principle and character in the Tory party?
I don't know what you mean by that.
You've got no idea.
No, I don't think that's true at all.
Why would they
because-
suggest it?
Because they're talking total nonsense. And
But why? Where would that nonsense come from?
Because look, the sad truth is that I had a lot of opponents, and
Why did Dominic Cummings, for whom you blame a lot of the leakage, why did he turn on you? Your closest advisor. Why did he turn?
you know, I think that.
I genuinely don't know.
No, nor do I. But I think advisors are good for a certain period, and then you know, arguably, I should have moved on quicker there.
But why? Why would he have turned so, as you put it, toxic?
I think I give an explanation in the
Not
book.
really.
It's in
I mean,
there.
he did the
I think-
drive. He did the drive.
Yeah.
You know, the ill-fated drive to
That's
see if
right.
his eyes still worked.
Yeah, and I think look, I
But
think
you supported him.
I did.
So why would he have turned?
Well, you may well ask.
I do ask.
Well, I think it's like it's a.
Did you never
it's a-
ask him?
No, of course not. But I think.
But why? Why wouldn't you say, Dominic, why are you leaking all this toxic stuff?
Well, because by the time the time I discovered it was happening, it was obviously time
And if
to
you
part-
see him now,
to part ways.
would you not say, Dominic, why did we
I
fall
think
apart?
I think that.
Does it not intrigue you?
I think there were probably. I don't know. I think you should never underestimate, sadly, the possibility of, there was some personal issue there. I don't know what I honestly don't know what it was. And as I say in the book, I think, it's a mystery to me. I think maybe I did mishandle the Barnard Castle thing and he felt bad about that. I don't know. Anyway, the interesting thing, if you look at what happened, was that after that pair of advisors had gone, we then had a very successful year because the briefing dried up and everything went better. But they'd taken away a lot of stuff, which they were able then to dress up as the whole Partygate nonsense, and then began a series of.
But why would they have
later-
developed such enmity with you?
Well, search me, Gov. I don't know. Honestly don't know. And I thought it was very sad. And I genuinely think it was a mistake. And
Well, of course you do. Looking back, you say, I am absolutely sure that with enough love and attention, I could have restored relations with the party in Parliament.
I think that's true.
You have such a lot of faith in your personal charm.
Yes. But I think but it was difficult because we'd been in there for so long.
You hadn't. That's
Yes,
my point.
but I know, but if
you hadn't.
I know, but you see, what happens after a while is that a lot of people start to you get a lot of disgruntlement on the backbenches. There's a lot of disappointment.
Your majority was too big.
So we had 109 new MPs,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know a lot of them. And some of them hadn't even, didn't even think that they were going to be MPs. No, I mean, I love them. They were all great people. But I do, though. They were very nice people. But I think that, and still are. But I think that they, I think it was sad. And the biggest mistake was then for our party to allow the right to split, because after I left, we didn't continue to be particularly strong on Brexit or anything much, and
lost people.
And so this Reform Party
Exactly
appeared,
right.
and Reform grew and grew and grew, so that by 2024 it was taking a huge amount of our votes, and that still is a problem.
Who do you blame for the fact that, despite the fact that Brexit promised to reduce immigration has grown hugely?
Yeah, look, I think the problem there was really the panic about inflation that followed the COVID pandemic. And what happened, if you look at it, was that we had several things came together. We had a lot of people who wanted to come from Afghanistan, who we had to take as a matter of honor. Ukraine, Hong Kong, these were big numbers of people that we had to take as out of principle. And the British people totally accepted that. But we also had a problem with the shock of the reopening of the economy post-COVID and the pressure on wage inflation. If you remember what happened, we couldn't stack the shelves. I don't know what it was like here in New Zealand, but we couldn't get people to drive the fuel tankers to the petrol stations.
Why not?
Because we didn't have enough lorry drivers. We didn't.
Where had they gone?
They'd gone everywhere. And by the way, there was a shortage of them.
No, but where had they gone?
I don't know where they'd gone, but
because of Brexit.
No, it wasn't. They had a shortage of lorry drivers in Germany, which, as far as I know, is a member of the European Union.
Right.
Okay.
Where had they gone then, as a matter of interest?
What?
Where had they gone?
Well, there was a shortage generally of people to do jobs of all kinds, and so what? Of course, every department in Whitehall wanted was hands to do jobs. And so the Migration Advisory Committee in 2021-2, it seems like social care. We needed huge numbers of people to help with social care. So the numbers went up. Now, the difference between post-Brexit and pre-Brexit, between now and before Brexit, is it's up to us, right? So yes, I think it is correct that the numbers went up too high, and most people would now say that. But the economic reasons why that happened were clear. But it's within our gear. The UK government, the authorities, can now decide to cut the numbers as low as they want, because that's the power. That's the power that Brexit gives you.
I've talked about how you tend to gloss Brexit, and you've, put up your arguments about how Brexit is the greatest thing. It's freedom, it's independence. Why don't you agree with Scottish independence?
Well, the Scottish people don't agree with Scottish independence. They voted against it.
Quite a lot do, and they want another referendum.
They voted against it.
They want another referendum.
No, they don't. They voted against it.
Do you think that it would be a good idea?
No, I don't.
Why not?
Well, it's obviously for the Scots to decide.
Yes,
but
obviously.
I think we're much, much better off together. And I think
because you are a unionist at heart.
I am, yeah.
So why can't you be a unionist with a reformed EU? Reform the EU, get together.
Because there's a big difference between the EU system and the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is based on unions that go back
on invasion and acquisition.
No, it's based on what? It's based on
Wales, Scotland.
No,
these a lot of fighting. I think there was quite a lot of fighting.
These go back to Tudor times, and if not before. And the union with Scotland goes back to 1707, and it's a thoroughly benign and wonderful thing, and it's based on shared history, principles, traditions, monarchy, heaven knows what. The things that unite the British people are enormous and incredibly powerful, and what you're saying is very interesting, because you're saying that we should have joined in with something that would basically create a single polity out of 28 very different countries, And I think you're right to make the analogy, because that was really what it was about. And it was really about trying to, and it is a single system of government. It is a single body of law. It is a single court. It is a single currency. And one of the reasons the UK will never rejoin, by the way, is that you have to imagine that the British people would be prepared to vote to spend gross about £20 billion a year, probably more, to give up control of their laws.
Oh, let's not talk about the money involved.
And their borders.
That's going to make everybody's brain hurt, because there's so much dispute about.
Well, I can tell you
how much. No,
I'm very happy to talk about that.
No.
Let's talk about it.
Oh, thank heavens we're out of time. Look, they're
No,
tuning the
come on.
lights
Well, I'm not out of time. I can tell you. No, that's you. You are.
The bus.
That's the bus of truth. Let's talk about the bus of truth,
The bus
Kim.
of gross exaggeration.
Let's talk about the bus of truth. No, because the funny thing is that nobody, on the, I don't know what side of the argument that you would necessarily be on, Kim, listening to you.
I'm not. I'm persuaded by the people who say, you put the big number up there, a large proportion of that big number gets put back into Britain by the EU.
But not spent by us, but spent by Brussels. And that was the whole point. It was about taking back control. And the 350 was half of which, it was completely correctly, as you say, was spent by Brussels in the EU on heaven knows what, tobacco subsidies or whatever the hell they wanted to spend it on the CAP or Common Agricultural Policy or whatever, fine. The rest of it, yes, did come back to the UK, but was spent at the discretion of Brussels on projects that we had no democratic control over. Now, the 350 figure was accurate because that was the gross sum. And we explained about 1 billion times during the referendum campaign what we were talking about, and everybody knew it at the time. Actually, when you go into the detail of it, the weekly figure mounted very, very swiftly. In fact, by 2020, it would have been something like £420 million a week. And so you're talking quite serious sums of money, very serious sums of money weekly from the UK.
How much did you have to pay the EU to get out of it?
And it was worth every penny, because
How much?
I can't give you the figures off the top of my head.
Billions.
But yes, but of course, because we were still locked in to an EU budget, and it was the honourable thing to do.
Time will tell. 10 years down the track.
I'm glad you mentioned the bus, because the people on the other side of the argument, and I hope people will remember this, were saying at the time that we would have 1 million people unemployed as a result of Brexit. Do you remember? Yeah. They said we would have to have a punishment budget to raise taxes. Actually, that was completely untrue. The Remain side sent a leaflet to every house in the country saying that there'd be an unemployment crisis. When I ceased to be Prime Minister, we had unemployment at a record low, lowest for 50 years. We had youth unemployment, the lowest for 45 years. And we had 620,000 more people in paid employment than there had been before the pandemic began. And what I don't know is why you don't get why don't you get the people who are on the Remain side of the argument in and say, why aren't they arraigned for misleading, for
as
lying?
They said about the Vietnam War, too soon to tell.
They were lying their pants off. They were lying their pants off.
In 10 years down the track, the argument will be settled. There will be no debate. It will be clear who is in the right, the Brexiteers or the Remainers. Is that your prediction?
I think we're already in the right. And I've given you a very clear example of how Brexit...
It is arguable.
I've given you, I think, an absolutely, irrefutable argument that... and this is why I think the Remain side find this so difficult, but it is true. From very, very early days, we found, quite serendipitously, a consequence of Brexit that literally allowed us to save the lives of many elderly, vulnerable.
I don't know why you're surprised at not managing to completely convince me. You couldn't completely convince the other members of your family that Brexit was a good idea. Rachel, Leo, your father, they all thought that Remain was... Have they changed their minds?
Well,
have they changed their minds?
17.4 million people.
Have they changed their minds?
You'd have to ask them. But 17.4 million people
I'm not
voted
disputing
to
the
leave
figures.
the EU.
I'm saying that if blood is
And by
indeed
the way-
thicker than water, why weren't you able to persuade them?
And other members of my family were in favour of Brexit. And I'm not going to give you their names. So I don't want to go into my family. But I can tell you that my job was not to make the case to all my family. That wasn't the thing.
I'm just
don't underestimate.
testing
It was
why your argument wasn't more persuasive for the people who...
I think it was. I think if you look at it, my argument turned out to be extremely persuasive.
The irrefutable Boris Johnson. I appreciate your
Thank
time.
you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Kim Hill Wants to Know, hosted by me, fairly obviously, Kim Hill. Kim Hill Wants to Know is produced by Melanie Phipps, with help from Liz Garton and Brianna Uratich-Gregg. Graphics were designed by Robert Whittaker, and the original theme music was composed by the Phoenix Foundation. Particular thanks to RNZ's audio engineers, who've made everything sound, well, beautiful. Follow and listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any podcast app so you don't miss an episode, or to get every episode delivered free to your phone. Listen out next week for my conversation with William Dalrymple about the Golden Road